I stood in my grandson's backyard, watching my entire family laugh, while my daughter-in-law threw the birthday present I'd bought into the trash, calling me a meddling old woman. None of them knew that with one phone call, I could shut down the company that pays all their salaries, because I'm the silent owner they've never heard of. I'm Ruth Palmer, and at 67 years old, I never imagined I'd be sitting here telling you about the day my own family's cruelty pushed me to show them exactly who they were dealing with. But that's what happened on a humid Saturday afternoon in Nashville, Tennessee, when my 7-year-old grandson Tyler's birthday party became the stage for the most humiliating and ultimately empowering moment of my life. You see, for the past 5 years, I've been living what most people would consider a perfect retirement. I sold my marketing company, Palmer and Associates, for $12 million and settled into a comfortable life of volunteering, traveling, and what I thought would be enjoying my golden years with my family. But somewhere along the way, I became invisible to the people I loved most, treated like a doddering old woman whose opinions didn't matter and whose presence was merely tolerated. The irony was that none of them knew the full truth about who I really was or what I'd accomplished. When I sold my company, I'd been deliberately vague about the details, telling my family it was a modest business that had done well enough to ensure my retirement. I'd never been one to brag about money, and I wanted my relationships with my children and grandchildren to be based on love, not financial expectations. But what I hadn't anticipated was how quickly my family would begin treating me like a burden once they assumed I was just another elderly widow living on a fixed income. My son Mike, who at 35 should have known better, had gradually become dismissive of my suggestions and opinions. My daughter Sarah, 32 and living in Atlanta, rarely called unless she needed something, but it was my daughter-in-law Ashley who had turned disrespect into an art form. Ashley was 29, petite, and possessed of the kind of aggressive confidence that some people mistake for strength. She'd married my son 3 years ago, and from the beginning, she'd made it clear that she considered me an outdated relic, whose ideas about child-rearing, family dynamics, and pretty much everything else were hopelessly behind the times. "Ruth means well," she'd say with that patronizing smile whenever I offered to help with Tyler or suggested family activities. "But she doesn't really understand how we do things now." How we do things now. As if love, respect, and family loyalty were outdated concepts that had expired along with my childbearing years. The worst part was watching my son, the little boy I'd raised to be kind and thoughtful, gradually adopt Ashley's attitude toward me. Mike had always been a people-pleaser, and it was clear that keeping peace with his wife was more important to him than defending his mother. "Mom, you know how Ashley is," he'd say whenever I mentioned feeling excluded or disrespected. "She's just very particular about Tyler's routine. It's not personal." But it felt personal when Ashley would change plans at the last minute to avoid including me in family activities. It felt personal when she'd contradicted me in front of Tyler, undermining my authority as his grandmother, and it definitely felt personal when she'd started making comments about my age, my energy level, and my outdated approaches to everything from discipline to nutrition. The birthday party incident was just the culmination of months of accumulated slights and deliberate exclusions that had left me feeling like a stranger in my own family. I'd been so excited about Tyler's 7th birthday. For weeks I'd been planning the perfect gift, a beautiful red bicycle with training wheels and a bell, the kind of present that creates magical childhood memories. I'd even had it gift-wrapped at the bike shop with a big yellow bow and a card that said, "For my wonderful grandson, with all my love, Grandma Ruth." The party was being held at Mike and Ashley's house in the Bellevue area of Nashville, a modest but well-maintained home in a neighborhood full of young families. I'd arrived precisely on time, carrying the beautifully wrapped bicycle, and looking forward to seeing Tyler's face light up when he opened it. But the moment I walked through the front door, I could sense tension in the air. Ashley was bustling around with that frantic energy she got when she was trying to control every detail of an event, and Mike was following behind her like a nervous assistant, clearly trying to anticipate her needs before she could find fault with anything. "Hi, Ruth," Ashley said without looking up from the elaborate superhero-themed decorations she was arranging. "You can put your gift on the table with the others." I looked at the gift table, which was already laden with beautifully wrapped packages, and realized that my bicycle was significantly larger than anything else there. In fact, it was probably more expensive than anything else there too, which hadn't been my intention, but was simply the result of wanting to give Tyler something truly special. "Actually," I said, "I thought maybe Tyler could open this one separately, since it's a bit different from the other gifts." Ashley's head snapped up, and I saw that flash of irritation that had become so familiar over the years. "Ruth, we've talked about this. We have a very specific plan for how the gift opening is going to work. All the presents get opened at the same time, after cake, so Tyler doesn't get overwhelmed." "Of course," I said, trying to keep my voice pleasant. "I just thought, that's the problem," Ashley interrupted, her voice getting sharper. "You think you know what's best for Tyler, but you don't live with him every day. You don't understand his personality or his needs the way Mike and I do." I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment as other family members, Mike's brother Dave and his wife Linda, plus several of Ashley's relatives, turned to watch our exchange. This was supposed to be a joyful celebration of my grandson's birthday, but Ashley was turning it into another opportunity to put me in my place. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "I didn't mean to cause any problems." "It's not about causing problems," Ashley continued, clearly warming to her theme. "It's about respecting boundaries. Tyler has a very specific routine, and when people," she looked directly at me, "try to disrupt that routine with grand gestures and expensive gifts, it creates chaos and confusion." Grand gestures. Expensive gifts. She was talking about a birthday present for my own grandson, like it was some kind of inappropriate intrusion. "Ashley," Mike said quietly, "maybe we should—" "No, Mike," Ashley said, her voice rising. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. Your mother needs to understand that she can't just waltz in here and take over Tyler's birthday with some elaborate present that's going to overshadow everything else we've planned." I stood there holding the bicycle, feeling every eye in the room focused on me, and realized that this moment was about more than gift-giving protocols. This was about Ashley establishing, once and for all, that I was an outsider in my own family, someone whose love and generosity were not just unwelcome, but actively harmful. "You know what?" Ashley said, walking over and taking the bicycle from my hands. "I think it's better if Tyler doesn't see this today. It's too much, too overwhelming, and it's going to make all the other gifts look inadequate." And then, in front of my entire family, Ashley walked to the back door and set my carefully chosen, beautifully wrapped gift outside on the patio, like it was a piece of trash that needed to be removed. "There," she said, brushing her hands together as if she'd just solved a complicated problem. "Now we can have the birthday party we actually planned, without any unnecessary drama or disruption." The silence that followed was deafening. I looked around the room at these people I loved, my son, my in-laws, my extended family, waiting for someone to say something, to defend me, to acknowledge that what Ashley had just done was cruel and inappropriate. But no one said a word. Mike was staring at the floor, clearly uncomfortable, but unwilling to contradict his wife. Dave and Linda were suddenly very interested in their phones. Ashley's relatives were smiling like this was all perfectly reasonable. And I realized, standing in that living room surrounded by people who were supposed to love me, that I had become the family scapegoat, the person everyone could blame for problems, dismiss when convenient, and humiliate without consequence. "I think," I said quietly, "I should probably go." "Oh, Ruth," Ashley said with that fake concern that was somehow worse than outright hostility. "You don't have to leave. Just understand that we have certain ways of doing things, and when you try to take over or change our plans, it creates stress for everyone." Take over, change plans. I was being accused of ruining my grandson's birthday party for the crime of bringing him a present. "No," I said, gathering what remained of my dignity. "I think it's better if I go. I clearly don't understand how things work anymore." As I walked toward the front door, I heard Ashley say to the room, "I know it seems harsh, but sometimes you have to set firm boundaries with people who don't respect your parenting choices." I got to my car, sat behind the steering wheel, and finally allowed myself to cry. Not just about the birthday party, but about years of accumulated disrespect, dismissal, and deliberate exclusion from the family I'd thought I was building through a lifetime of love and sacrifice. But as I sat there in that driveway, something shifted inside me. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was angry. Angry at being treated like an irrelevant old woman. Angry at watching my family participate in my humiliation. Angry at being dismissed by people who had no idea what I was capable of. That's when I remembered something that Ashley and the rest of my family didn't know. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I needed. "Hello, Jennifer," I said when my former business partner answered. "It's Ruth Palmer. I need to ask you about some of the employees at the firm." What my family didn't know was that when I'd sold Palmer and Associates 5 years ago, I hadn't sold it to a stranger. I'd sold it to my business partner, Jennifer Walsh, but I'd retained a 40% ownership stake and remained on the board of directors. What they also didn't know was that the modest business they thought I'd retired from was now one of the largest marketing firms in the Southeast, with over 300 employees and annual revenues exceeding $50 million. And what they definitely didn't know was that several of them, including my son and daughter-in-law, were currently employed by companies that were either directly owned by my firm or were major clients whose contracts I could influence with a single phone call. As I sat in that driveway, still tasting the humiliation of my grandson's birthday party, I realized that my family was about to learn exactly what happened when you underestimated Ruth Palmer. They wanted me to stay out of their business? I was about to show them just how much their business depended on me. To understand how I reached that breaking point in my grandson's backyard, you need to know about the journey that brought me from being a respected businesswoman to feeling like an unwelcome stranger in my own family's life. 15 years ago, I was Ruth Palmer, CEO and founder of Palmer and Associates, one of Nashville's most successful marketing firms. I'd built that company from nothing, starting in my spare bedroom when Mike was in high school and Sarah was in middle school. My late husband Tom had been incredibly supportive, handling the household responsibilities while I worked 18-hour days building client relationships and developing marketing strategies that consistently delivered results. "You're going to change this whole industry," Tom used to tell me as I'd work late into the night, fine-tuning campaigns for our growing roster of clients. "These businesses don't know how lucky they are to have you fighting for them." Tom had died of cancer 8 years ago, and while his loss had been devastating, it had also motivated me to throw myself even deeper into building the company. Palmer and Associates became my legacy, my proof that a woman could succeed in a male-dominated industry through sheer determination and superior results. By the time I was ready to step back, we had offices in Nashville, Memphis, and Atlanta, with over 200 employees and contracts with major corporations throughout the Southeast. We handled marketing for healthcare systems, financial institutions, technology companies, and dozens of smaller businesses that had grown exponentially under our guidance. But here's what I never told my family about the sale of Palmer & Associates. I didn't just walk away with a check and retire. The sale was structured as a strategic partnership with my longtime business partner, Jennifer Walsh, who had been with the company for 12 years and understood my vision better than anyone. Jennifer bought 60% of the company and took over day-to-day operations as CEO. I retained 40% ownership and remained on the board of directors, with the understanding that I'd provide strategic oversight and maintain relationships with our most important clients. It was the perfect arrangement. I could step back from the daily grind while still maintaining influence over a company that had been my life's work. But when I explained this to my family, I deliberately downplayed the financial aspects and the ongoing nature of my involvement. I sold my little marketing company, I'd told them. Jennifer's taking over the day-to-day stuff, and I'm officially retired. I'd thought I was being modest, avoiding the kind of family drama that sometimes comes with significant wealth. I wanted my relationships with my children and grandchildren to be based on love and shared experiences, not on their perception of me as a source of financial support or inheritance. What I hadn't anticipated was how quickly that modesty would be interpreted as irrelevance. Mike had always been proud of my business success when he was growing up. He'd bring friends by the office, show them around, and tell people his mom was basically the most important marketing person in Nashville. But as he got older and started his own career, he seemed to become embarrassed by having a mother who was more professionally successful than he was. After college, Mike had taken a job as a regional sales manager for Pinnacle Solutions, a mid-sized consulting firm that specialized in helping businesses improve their operational efficiency. It was good work, respectable work, and I was proud that he'd found a career path that utilized his natural people skills and organizational abilities. But I could sense his discomfort whenever people connected him to my company. At family gatherings, if someone mentioned Palmer & Associates, Mike would quickly change the subject or make jokes about Mom's little hobby business that had gotten lucky in the marketplace. "You know how it is," he'd tell people. "She got in at the right time, before the market was really competitive. These days, you need a lot more sophistication to succeed in marketing." It stung to hear my life's work dismissed so casually. But I told myself Mike was just trying to establish his own professional identity, separate from mine. That was natural and healthy, even if his methods were sometimes hurtful. My daughter Sarah had moved to Atlanta after college and worked in human resources for a large nonprofit organization. She was passionate about her work and genuinely good at it, but she'd also developed a tendency to treat me like I was completely out of touch with the modern working world. "Mom, you have to understand that business is completely different now," she'd explained during our phone calls. "Everything you knew is basically obsolete. The internet changed everything, and social media marketing is a totally different beast than what you used to do." Social media marketing. As if Palmer & Associates hadn't been pioneering digital marketing strategies for the past decade. As if we hadn't won awards for innovative online campaigns that had transformed our clients' businesses. But I bit my tongue and let Sarah believe she was educating me about developments in the business world, because maintaining our relationship seemed more important than defending my professional legacy. The real problem started when Mike married Ashley 3 years ago. Ashley came from a family where women were expected to be decorative rather than accomplished. Her mother had never worked outside the home. Her grandmother had been a traditional housewife. and the idea of an older woman having strong opinions or professional experience seemed to genuinely confuse her. "It's so sweet that you had your little business," she'd said to me during one of our first conversations. "Tom must have been so supportive, letting you play around with marketing while he handled the real financial responsibilities." Letting me play around, handle the real financial responsibilities. She had no idea that my little business had been the primary source of our family's income for over a decade, or that Tom's death had been financially devastating precisely because his insurance and retirement benefits had been modest compared to the wealth I'd been generating through Palmer and Associates. But Ashley's misconceptions about my background were just the beginning. As she settled into her role as Mike's wife and Tyler's mother, she began systematically working to minimize my influence in their family dynamic. It started small. She'd schedule family dinners for times when she knew I had other commitments, then express disappointment that I couldn't make it. She'd plan activities for Tyler during weekends when I'd traditionally spent time with him, claiming she'd forgotten about our standing arrangements. "Oh, Ruth," she'd say with that bright fake smile, "I'm sure you understand that Tyler's schedule is really busy these days. He has soccer and piano lessons and play dates, and we just can't accommodate everyone who wants time with him." Everyone who wants time with him. I was Tyler's grandmother, not some distant relative angling for attention. The financial assumptions were perhaps the most insulting. Ashley seemed to have decided that as a retiree living on a fixed income, I couldn't afford to contribute meaningfully to family expenses or activities. When they were planning a family vacation to Disney World last year, Ashley had very publicly announced that they'd love to include Grandma Ruth, but we know these trips can be expensive for people on limited budgets. Limited budgets. I had more money in my checking account than most people earned in a year, but I was being treated like a charity case who needed financial consideration. "We could maybe help with some of your expenses," Ashley had continued, "if you really want to come. We know how important it is for older people to feel included." The condescension was breathtaking. I was being offered financial assistance for a vacation that I could have funded for the entire extended family without making a dent in my investment portfolio. But the most painful part was watching Mike go along with all of this. My son, who had grown up seeing me as a strong, capable woman who could handle any challenge, was now treating me like a fragile elderly person who needed to be managed and protected from disappointment. "Mom, you know Ashley means well," he'd say whenever I tried to address the growing pattern of exclusion and disrespect. "She's just very organized, and she likes to have control over Tyler's schedule. It's not personal." But it felt personal when Ashley would countermand my parenting suggestions in front of Tyler. It felt personal when she'd roll her eyes if I offered to help with childcare or household tasks. And it definitely felt personal when she started making comments about my age and energy level in front of other family members. "I worry about Ruth babysitting Tyler," she'd said to Mike's brother Dave and his wife Linda during a recent family gathering. "I mean, she's almost 70 and Tyler is so active. What if something happened and she couldn't keep up with him?" Almost 70. I was 67, in excellent health, and more physically active than Ashley herself. But somehow my age had become a liability that disqualified me from basic grandmotherly activities. The professional dismissiveness was equally grating. Whenever business topics came up in family conversations, Ashley would speak to me in the slow, patient tone, usually reserved for children or people with cognitive impairments. "Ruth, I know you used to do some marketing work," she'd say, "but the business world is so different now. Everything is digital and data-driven. It's probably hard for someone from your generation to understand how complex modern marketing has become." Someone from my generation. Complex modern marketing. She was lecturing me about an industry I'd helped shape, using insights and strategies that my company had developed and implemented for hundreds of clients. But perhaps the most infuriating aspect of Ashley's behavior was the way she'd positioned herself as Tyler's protector against my supposedly inappropriate influence. Tyler doesn't need to be confused by outdated ideas about work and success, she'd told Mike during a conversation I'd accidentally overheard. Ruth comes from a generation where women were just grateful to have any job at all. I want Tyler to understand that modern women are strategic and ambitious in ways his grandmother never had the opportunity to be. Strategic and ambitious. She was describing my granddaughter like I was some kind of historical relic who'd never experienced professional achievement or strategic thinking. The birthday party incident was just the culmination of 3 years of accumulated disrespect, but it was also the moment I realized that my strategy of keeping quiet about my ongoing business success had backfired completely. By trying to be modest and avoid appearing boastful about my wealth and professional achievements, I'd allowed my family to create a false narrative about who I was and what I was capable of. They'd turned me into a caricature of a dotty old grandmother whose opinions didn't matter and whose contributions weren't valued. But what they didn't understand was that the dotty old grandmother they'd been dismissing was still very much connected to the business world that employed most of them. Mike's job at Pinnacle Solutions? Pinnacle was one of Palmer and Associates' oldest clients, and our marketing campaigns had been instrumental in their growth over the past decade. Ashley's position as a sales coordinator at Dynamic Healthcare Marketing? Dynamic was a subsidiary of one of our major accounts, and their contract with us was worth over $2 million annually. Dave's management role at Central Tennessee Financial Services? We'd been handling their marketing and public relations for 8 years, and I personally maintained the relationship with their executive team. Even Sarah's nonprofit in Atlanta received grant funding that was partially coordinated through corporate partnerships that Palmer and Associates had helped establish. In trying to minimize my importance in their personal lives, my family had forgotten that I might still have influence in their professional ones. And as I sat in my car outside Tyler's birthday party, humiliated and heartbroken, but also increasingly angry, I realized it was time to remind them exactly who they'd been disrespecting. They wanted me to stay out of their business? Perfect. Because their business was about to become very interesting. The birthday party disaster that finally pushed me over the edge had actually been building for weeks, through a series of increasingly bold, disrespectful incidents that showed me exactly how my family really viewed me. It started 3 weeks before Tyler's birthday, when I'd made the mistake of offering to help plan the party. I'd love to contribute to Tyler's celebration, I'd told Ashley during a phone call. Maybe I could handle the decorations or organize some games for the kids. I have some experience with event planning from my business days. The silence on the other end of the line was so long, I thought we'd been disconnected. "Ruth," Ashley finally said, her voice carrying that edge of barely controlled irritation I'd become so familiar with. "I appreciate the offer, but Mike and I have everything completely under control. We've been planning this party for months, and we have a very specific vision." "Of course," I said quickly. "I just thought maybe I could help with—" "You know what would really help?" Ashley interrupted. "If you could just trust us to handle our son's birthday party without interference. We're his parents, and we know what's appropriate for him and what isn't." Interference. I was offering to help plan my grandson's birthday party, and she was calling it interference. "I didn't mean to interfere," I said carefully. "I just wanted to be involved in something important to Tyler." "You can be involved by showing up and enjoying the party like any other guest," Ashley replied. "But the planning and organizing is really something for parents to handle. Any other guest." That phrase hit me like a slap. I wasn't just any other guest. I was Tyler's grandmother, the woman who'd been there for every important moment of his life until Ashley started systematically excluding me. But the conversation got worse. Actually, Ashley continued, since we're talking about the party, I should probably mention that we're keeping it pretty small this year. Just immediate family and a few of Tyler's closest friends. We don't want him to get overwhelmed. That sounds reasonable, I said, though I was confused about why she was telling me this since I was obviously immediate family. So it'll be me and Mike, obviously, plus Dave and Linda and their kids, my parents, my sister and her family, and Tyler's friends from school, maybe 15 people total. I waited for her to mention my invitation, but she just kept talking about menu planning and party favors as if I weren't part of the conversation. Ashley, I finally said, am I invited to Tyler's birthday party? Another long pause. Well, of course you're invited, Ruth. I just thought, I know these kids' parties can be pretty chaotic, and with your situation, I wasn't sure if you'd want to deal with all the noise and activity. My situation? What situation could she possibly be referring to? What situation is that? I asked. You know, just being older and probably preferring quieter environments. Plus, all the parents will be talking about school stuff and work stuff, and I thought you might feel out of place. Out of place at my own grandson's birthday party. Ashley, I would very much like to be at Tyler's birthday party, I said firmly. He's my grandson, and I've been to every one of his birthday parties since he was born. Of course, she said quickly. I just want to make sure you understand that it's going to be very casual and kid-focused, not really the kind of elegant event you might be expecting. Elegant event. She was suggesting that I was too pretentious to enjoy a child's birthday party. I think I can handle a children's party, Ashley. Great, then we'll see you there. Oh, and Ruth, since we're trying to keep the gift situation manageable, we've asked everyone to stick to a $20 limit. We don't want Tyler to get spoiled or for other kids to feel bad about their presents. $20 limit. She was trying to control how much I could spend on my own grandson's birthday gift. I see, I said. And what if I've already bought something that cost more than $20? Well, you could always return it and get something smaller. Or maybe save it for Christmas. We're really trying to teach Tyler that birthdays aren't about expensive gifts. It's about family time and making memories. Making memories. She was lecturing me about the true meaning of birthdays while simultaneously trying to exclude me from the celebration. But I agreed to the $20 limit, thinking maybe I could find a nice book or educational toy that would fit their guidelines. What I didn't expect was for Ashley to take the restriction even further. 2 days before the party, she called me again. Ruth, I've been thinking about Tyler's gifts, and I realize we need to be even more specific about what's appropriate. More specific how? Well, we're trying to encourage Tyler to appreciate experiences over material things, so we're asking everyone to give gifts that are more educational or creative. Books, art supplies, maybe a science kit. Things that will help him learn and grow instead of just entertaining him. Educational or creative. She was now controlling not just the price range of gifts, but the categories. What about the bicycle I bought? I asked. Riding a bike is certainly educational and creative. A bicycle? Ashley's voice went up an octave. Ruth, a bicycle costs way more than $20, and it's definitely not the kind of gift we had in mind. Plus, we haven't taught Tyler to ride yet, so it would just sit in the garage gathering dust. I could teach him to ride, I offered. I taught Mike and Sarah when they were his age. That's very sweet, but Mike and I want to be the ones to teach Tyler important skills like bike riding. It's a special parent-child bonding experience, and we don't want to miss out on that. Parent-child bonding experience. Everything that had traditionally been part of a grandmother's relationship with her grandchild was being reframed as something that belonged exclusively to the parents. So, what would you like me to give Tyler? I asked, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. Maybe a nice book about friendship or sharing, something age-appropriate that reinforces the values we're trying to teach him. A book about sharing. The irony was incredible. But I agreed, returned the bicycle to the store, and bought a beautiful collection of children's books about kindness and family relationships. I thought I'd found a compromise that would satisfy Ashley's requirements while still allowing me to give Tyler something meaningful. I was wrong. The morning of the party, Ashley called me one more time. "Ruth, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page about today. This is Tyler's special day, and we want everything to go smoothly." "Of course," I said. "I'm looking forward to celebrating with him." "Great. So just to be clear, we'll be doing gifts after cake, and we'd appreciate it if you could let Mike or me announce your gift when it's time. We want to make sure Tyler understands who each present is from and why it's special." "That's fine," I said, though I was puzzled about why this needed to be explicitly stated. "And Ruth, I know you love Tyler very much, but try to remember that today is about what he wants, not about what you think he should want. Sometimes grandparents can get a little overwhelming with their enthusiasm." Overwhelming enthusiasm. Loving my grandson too much was now being characterized as a problem that needed to be managed. But the real explosion came when I arrived at the party with my carefully selected books, only to discover that Ashley had very different ideas about how the day should unfold. "Oh, Ruth," she said when she saw my gift bag, "I should have mentioned that we decided to change the gift format. Instead of individual presents, we're doing a group gift. Everyone contributed money, and we bought Tyler the new gaming system he's been wanting." Group gift. Everyone had contributed except me, because no one had told me about this change in plans. "I wasn't asked to contribute to a group gift," I said. "Well, we figured you'd probably prefer to do your own thing anyway," Ashley replied with that bright, fake smile. "You can save your books for another time." Another time, I'd already returned the bicycle and carefully selected age-appropriate books that met all of her specifications, and now she was telling me that gifts weren't even happening the way she'd described. "Ashley, I'd really like Tyler to have these books today. They're specifically chosen for his birthday." "Ruth, we've already explained the gift situation. Adding individual presents now would just confuse Tyler and make the other kids feel bad that they didn't bring separate gifts." That's when I realized what was really happening. Ashley had deliberately given me incorrect information about the gift protocol, knowing that when I showed up with an individual present, she'd be able to publicly embarrass me by explaining why my gift wasn't appropriate. "Tyler loves books," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I don't see how giving him books would confuse anyone." "It's not about the books specifically," Ashley said, her voice getting sharper. "It's about following the plan we made as Tyler's parents. When grandparents start making their own rules and doing their own thing, it creates chaos and undermines our authority." Undermines our authority. I was being accused of challenging Ashley's parental authority by bringing birthday gifts to my grandson's birthday party. "I'm not trying to undermine anyone," I said. "I'm trying to celebrate Tyler's birthday. And you can celebrate by participating in the activities we've planned, not by creating your own parallel celebration that's going to overshadow what we've organized." Parallel celebration. Overshadow. She was describing my gift of children's books like it was some kind of hostile takeover attempt. That's when Mike appeared, clearly sent by Ashley to handle the situation. "Mom," he said quietly, "maybe we could talk privately for a minute." We stepped into the kitchen, away from the other party guests who were starting to arrive. "Mike, I don't understand what's happening," I said. "I followed all of Ashley's guidelines about gifts, and now she's telling me I can't give Tyler the books I bought for him." "Mom, Ashley's been planning this party for months. She's really stressed about making sure everything goes perfectly. And when you bring your own gifts after we've already explained the group gift situation, it just creates more work for her." "More work? How does giving Tyler a book create work for anyone?" "Because then she has to figure out how to incorporate your gift into the planned activities, and it throws off the timing, and Tyler gets confused about why some people are giving individual gifts and others aren't." I stared at my son, this man I'd raised to be kind and thoughtful, and realized he was completely serious. He genuinely believed that his wife's elaborate control over every aspect of Tyler's birthday party was more important than allowing his mother to give his son a present. "Mike, I'm Tyler's grandmother. I should be able to give him a birthday gift without needing permission or having to follow a complex protocol." "And you can, Mom. Just maybe next time coordinate with Ashley first so we can make sure everything fits together smoothly." Next time, as if there was going to be a next time, given how this conversation was going. "What if I don't want to coordinate my relationship with my grandson through Ashley?" I asked. Mike's expression shifted, and I saw that same look of irritation I'd been seeing from Ashley. "Mom, Ashley is Tyler's mother. She's not asking for anything unreasonable. She just wants to be consulted about things that affect her son. If you can't respect that, then maybe you need to think about whether you're really putting Tyler's needs first, or just your own desire to be involved." My own desire to be involved. My son was suggesting that wanting to be part of my grandson's life was selfish rather than natural. "Mike, I love Tyler. Everything I do is about what's best for him." Then trust his parents to know what's best for him, instead of constantly trying to override our decisions. Constantly trying to override. We'd gone from me bringing inappropriate birthday gifts to me being accused of systematically undermining their parenting. "I'm not trying to override anything," I said. "I'm trying to be Tyler's grandmother. And you can be his grandmother within the boundaries Ashley and I have set. We're not asking you to stop loving him or stop seeing him. We're just asking you to respect our role as his parents." Boundaries, that word again. What boundaries, specifically? Like checking with us before buying expensive gifts. Like not making plans with Tyler without asking us first. Like not contradicting our rules or our decisions in front of him. I stood in that kitchen, listening to my son outline a series of restrictions on my relationship with my grandson, and realized that I'd lost my family without even understanding how it had happened. "And if I don't agree to these boundaries?" I asked. Mike looked uncomfortable, but his answer was clear. "Then we'll have to limit Tyler's exposure to situations that create conflict or confusion for him. We're not trying to be harsh, Mom, but Tyler's well-being comes first." Limit Tyler's exposure. They were threatening to restrict my access to my grandson if I didn't submit to Ashley's control. That's when I walked back into the living room, handed Ashley my bag of carefully chosen books, and told her she could decide whether Tyler was allowed to have them. And that's when Ashley, in front of the entire family, threw my gifts in the trash and told me I was a meddling old woman who needed to learn to stay out of their business. What she didn't know was that I was about to show her exactly what staying out of their business looked like, and it wasn't going to be anything like what she expected. Sitting in my car outside Tyler's birthday party, my hands still shaking from the humiliation I'd just endured, I did something I hadn't done in years. I allowed myself to get angry, not just hurt or disappointed, but genuinely righteously furious at the way my family had treated me. For 3 years, I'd been making excuses for Ashley's behavior, rationalizing Mike's compliance, and accepting the gradual erosion of my role in Tyler's life. But watching my daughter-in-law throw my carefully chosen gifts in the trash while my entire family stood by and watched had finally shown me the truth. I wasn't keeping the peace. I was enabling my own abuse. That realization hit me like a lightning bolt, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt something other than helpless sadness. I felt powerful. Ashley had made a critical error in her campaign to marginalize me. She'd assumed that because I was older, because I'd stepped back from active business involvement, I was powerless to fight back against her manipulation. But she'd forgotten something important. I hadn't built a multi-million-dollar company by being passive or accepting defeat. I pulled out my phone and called Jennifer Walsh, my former business partner and the current CEO of Palmer & Associates. "Ruth!" Jennifer's voice was warm and welcoming. "This is a nice surprise. How are you enjoying your Saturday?" "Actually, Jennifer, I'm having a bit of a family situation, and I need to ask you about some of our employees and client relationships. Do we currently employ someone named Mike Palmer at our Pinnacle Solutions account?" I heard the sound of typing as Jennifer pulled up our client database. "Mike Palmer. Yes, he's listed as a regional manager at Pinnacle. He's been with them for about 8 years, I think. Why do you ask?" "He's my son." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. "Your son works for one of our clients?" "Ruth, I had no idea." "I've been keeping my business and family life separate," I said. "But that's about to change. What can you tell me about Pinnacle's relationship with us?" "They're one of our oldest accounts. We handle all their marketing, public relations, and brand development. It's about a $4 million annual contract." $4 million. Ashley had no idea that her husband's employment depended on a contract that I could influence with a single conversation. "Jennifer, I need you to check on a few other names for me. Ashley Palmer, she might be listed as Ashley Morrison, her maiden name, and Dave Palmer." More typing. "Ashley Morrison, sales coordinator at Dynamic Healthcare Marketing, and Dave Palmer, regional manager at Central Tennessee Financial Services. They're my family. Ashley is my daughter-in-law, and Dave is my other son's brother. I assume Dynamic and Central Tennessee are both in our client network?" Dynamic is a subsidiary of MedCore Solutions, which is one of our biggest healthcare accounts, about $6 million annually. Central Tennessee has been with us for 8 years. They're about a $2 million account. I sat in my car doing the math. Between Pinnacle Solutions, MedCore Solutions, and Central Tennessee Financial Services, my family members were employed by companies that generated $12 million in annual revenue for Palmer & Associates, $12 million in business that was managed by a company I owned 40% of and where I served on the board of directors. "Jennifer," I said carefully, "hypothetically speaking, what would happen if we decided to restructure our approach to one of these accounts?" "Well, when we reduce our service levels with a client, they often have to make internal adjustments. Sometimes that means eliminating positions that were created to liaison with our services." Eliminating positions. I felt a cold smile spreading across my face. "Jennifer, I think it's time for me to take a more active role in our client relationship management." "Really? Ruth, that would be wonderful. We've missed your strategic insights." "Excellent. Could you arrange for me to have a full briefing on all our current accounts?" I looked back at the house where my family was celebrating my grandson's birthday without me. "Monday morning," I said. "First thing." After I hung up with Jennifer, I made calls to my financial advisor, lawyer, and accountant to understand my rights and the tax implications of becoming more active in Palmer & Associates again. By the time I finished those phone calls, I had a complete picture of my family's financial vulnerability and my own power to influence their professional lives. Mike worked for a company that depended entirely on Palmer & Associates for their marketing success. Ashley worked for a subsidiary that existed only because of our relationship with their parent company. Dave's employer had been with us for 8 years and relied on our services for their public reputation management. All three of them could lose their jobs if I decided to exercise my influence as a major stakeholder in Palmer and Associates. But I wasn't interested in destroying their careers out of spite. I was interested in teaching them a lesson about respect and consequences. That evening, I sat in my study and developed what I came to think of as Operation Respect. The goal wasn't to hurt my family financially. The goal was to create a series of professional challenges that would make them realize how much their comfortable lives depended on relationships and systems they'd taken for granted. Mike would face a routine evaluation of Pinnacle Solutions' performance metrics. Ashley would discover that MedCore Solutions was streamlining their vendor relationships. Dave would learn that Central Tennessee Financial Services was being encouraged to explore more cost-effective alternatives. None of these developments would happen immediately or dramatically. They would unfold over several weeks, creating professional stress and uncertainty without immediately threatening their livelihoods. And throughout this process, I would be completely available to offer support, advice, and assistance if they approached me with the respect and appreciation I deserved. By Sunday evening, I had a comprehensive plan that would teach Ashley, Mike, and Dave exactly what happened when you told Ruth Palmer to stay out of your business. Monday morning, I dressed in my best business suit for the first time in months, drove to the Palmer and Associates offices in downtown Nashville, and walked into Jennifer's office with the confidence of someone who was about to remind the world exactly who Ruth Palmer really was. "Welcome back," Jennifer said with a smile. "I have the client files you requested, and I've scheduled meetings with our account managers for Pinnacle, MedCore, and Central Tennessee." "Perfect," I said. "Let's discuss some strategic adjustments to our service delivery models." By the end of that day, 3 companies that employed my family members had received calls from Palmer and Associates suggesting consultations about optimizing their marketing investments. The game was about to begin, and for the first time in years, I was playing to win. The beauty of my plan was in its precision timing. Over the course of 3 weeks, I orchestrated a series of seemingly unrelated business developments that created exactly the kind of professional pressure I'd intended. It started with Mike receiving a call from his supervisor at Pinnacle Solutions requesting an urgent meeting to discuss performance metrics and client satisfaction ratings. Palmer and Associates was conducting a routine evaluation of all major client relationships, and Pinnacle had been flagged for a comprehensive service assessment. Mike called me that evening, his voice tight with stress. "Mom, I'm having some issues at work. My supervisor thinks there might be problems with one of our major vendor relationships, and apparently it could affect several positions in my department." "Oh, honey, that sounds concerning," I said. "Is there anything I can do to help?" "I don't think so. It's some marketing company that handles our advertising and public relations. Pinnacle something. Palmer and Associates, I think." Palmer and Associates. I let the name hang in the air for a moment. "That name sounds familiar," I said thoughtfully. "I think I might have heard of them back in my business days." "Really? Do you know anything about what they do?" "A little. They used to be quite reputable, if I remember correctly. Maybe I could ask around, see if any of my old business contacts know anything about their current strategies." "Would you? I mean, I know you've been retired for a while, but maybe some of your connections might have insights." "Of course, sweetheart. Let me make a few calls and see what I can find out." The next development came when Ashley received notice that MedCore Solutions was restructuring their vendor partnerships and wanted to schedule a meeting with Dynamic Healthcare Marketing. Ashley called me that evening in near panic. "Ruth, I know we haven't always... I know things have been complicated between us, but I really need some advice." This was the first time in 3 years that Ashley had called me voluntarily. "What's wrong, dear?" I asked. It's my job. My company is having some kind of crisis with our biggest client. They're talking about bringing our services in-house, which would basically eliminate my entire department. Oh, Ashley, that sounds terrifying. Do you know what prompted this decision? Something about cost optimization. The client is a healthcare company called MedCore Solutions, and apparently they work with this marketing firm called Palmer & Associates, and Palmer & Associates is recommending that MedCore reconsider their relationship with smaller vendors like us. You know, Ashley, I think I've heard of Palmer & Associates. They have quite a reputation in the Nashville business community. Really? Do you think, would you have any way of finding out what their concerns are? I know you used to work in marketing. Ashley was asking me, the woman she'd been treating like an irrelevant old fool, to use my professional connections to save her job. The third phase began when Dave received word that Central Tennessee Financial Services was being encouraged by their marketing consultants to explore more cost-effective alternatives. Dave called me Friday evening. Mom, I'm sorry to bother you, but Linda thought maybe you might have some ideas about a situation I'm dealing with at work. What kind of situation? Our company might be losing our marketing contract. It's been with the same firm for 8 years, but apparently they're suggesting we could get the same services cheaper elsewhere. Do you know which marketing firm you're working with? Palmer & Associates. They're supposedly one of the biggest in the Southeast, but now they're basically telling us we should look for alternatives. Palmer & Associates, I repeated thoughtfully. I'm starting to hear that name quite a bit lately. You have? From where? Mike mentioned them earlier this week. He's having some issues with them too. And Ashley called yesterday with a similar problem. Wait, Mike and Ashley are both dealing with Palmer & Associates problems? What are the odds of that? What indeed? It does seem like quite a coincidence, I agreed. Maybe I should do some research and see what's going on with this company. That weekend, I let my family stew in their professional anxieties while I prepared for the final phase. Monday morning, I called a family meeting. I've been hearing about everyone's work problems, I told Mike when I called. I think I might have some information that could help all of you. Tuesday evening, Mike, Ashley, and Dave all gathered in my dining room for what I'd described as a strategy session. I've been doing some research, I began, and I think I've figured out what's happening with your various work situations. What did you find out? Ashley asked, her usual attitude replaced by genuine anxiety. Well, first I should explain something that I haven't told any of you before. When I said I'd sold my little marketing company 5 years ago, I wasn't entirely accurate about the details. Mike looked confused. What do you mean? I mean that Palmer & Associates isn't just some company I've heard of. Palmer & Associates is my company. I founded it, built it, and when I retired, I sold 60% to my business partner while retaining 40% ownership and a seat on the board of directors. The silence that followed was deafening. Your company? Ashley whispered. My company. Which means that when Pinnacle Solutions is being evaluated for cost effectiveness, when MedCore is considering bringing dynamic services in-house, and when Central Tennessee is being encouraged to find cheaper alternatives, those decisions are being made by a company I own. Dave's face had gone completely white. Mom, are you saying that you're the reason we're all having problems at work? I'm saying that the woman you've been treating like an irrelevant old fool for the past 3 years is actually the person who controls $12 million worth of annual business that directly affects all of your careers. Ashley looked like she was going to be sick. But why? Why would you do this to us? Ashley, last week you threw my birthday gifts for Tyler in the trash and told me to stay out of your business while my entire family stood by and watched. You wanted me to stay out of your business? Fine. But your business, as it turns out, is my business. Mike found his voice first. Mom, this is insane. You're talking about destroying our careers because of a family disagreement. Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like I'm conducting routine business evaluations that any responsible company owner would undertake. Mom, Mike said desperately, what do you want from us? I want you to understand that respect isn't something you can turn on and off when it's convenient. I want you to recognize that the woman you've been dismissing and disrespecting is someone whose influence extends far beyond your assumptions. I stood up from my dining room table and looked at these 3 adults who had spent years treating me like a burden. Palmer and Associates will be making final decisions about these client relationships next week. If you want to influence those decisions, I suggest you figure out how to approach someone with the business experience and industry connections that might be helpful. What are you saying? Ashley asked. I'm saying that if you want my help saving your jobs, you're going to have to ask for it properly. With respect, with appreciation, with acknowledgement that I'm not just Tyler's dotty old grandmother, but a successful businesswoman whose expertise and relationships have value. Dave looked stunned. You're holding our careers hostage until we apologize? I'm not holding anything hostage. I'm simply making it clear that Ruth Palmer, the woman you've been treating like an irrelevant old fool, is actually someone whose respect you should have been earning all along. I walked to the front door and held it open. You have until Friday to decide whether you want my help or whether you'd prefer to handle these professional challenges on your own. As they filed out in stunned silence, Ashley turned back to me one more time. Ruth, we didn't know. We never realized that you were still what, Ashley? Still capable? Still intelligent? Still someone whose opinions and relationships matter? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Well, now you do, I said. The question is, what are you going to do with that knowledge? After they left, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in my living room, looking out at the garden Tom and I had planted together 20 years ago. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like myself again. Ruth Palmer, successful businesswoman. Ruth Palmer, strategic thinker. Ruth Palmer, someone who commanded respect. My family had exactly 3 days to decide whether they wanted to rebuild our relationships on a foundation of mutual respect, or whether they preferred to learn just how uncomfortable their lives could become without Ruth Palmer's help. Either way, no one would ever throw my gifts in the trash again. 6 months later, I was sitting in Tyler's playroom, watching my grandson build an elaborate castle with blocks, while Ashley prepared lunch in the kitchen, humming softly as she worked. The transformation in our family dynamics had been so complete that sometimes I had to remind myself that this peaceful domestic scene was the same household where I'd been treated like an unwelcome intruder just months earlier. But the journey from that devastating birthday party confrontation to this moment of genuine family harmony had been anything but smooth. The 3 days following my revelation about Palmer and Associates were the longest 72 hours of my family's professional lives. And I'll admit there were moments when I wondered if I'd pushed too hard, been too harsh in my methods of teaching them about respect and consequences. Mike was the first to crack. Thursday morning, less than 48 hours after our dinner confrontation, he showed up at my front door at 7 a.m., still wearing his pajamas under a hastily thrown-on jacket. "Mom," he said, his voice hoarse with exhaustion, "we need to talk." I invited him in and made coffee while he sat at my kitchen table, looking like a man who hadn't slept in days. "I've been thinking about everything you said Tuesday night," he began, "and I need you to know that I'm sorry, not because I'm scared about my job, though I am, but because I finally understand what we've been doing to you." "What have you been doing to me, Mike?" "We've been treating you like you're invisible, like your opinions don't matter, like your feelings don't count, like you're just some old woman we have to tolerate instead of our mother who deserves respect." It was the first genuine acknowledgement I'd received from any of my family members about their behavior over the past 3 years. "Why do you think that happened?" I asked. Mike was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee cup like it might contain answers. "I think," he said slowly, "we got comfortable assuming you were powerless. When you retired and sold your business, we stopped seeing you as someone who had built something impressive and started seeing you as someone who used to work but didn't anymore." "And what changed your perspective?" "Finding out that you didn't just build something impressive, you built something that controls our entire professional lives. Mom, do you understand that Ashley cried for 6 hours straight Tuesday night? Not because she's worried about her job, but because she finally realized how cruel she's been to someone who could have destroyed her career at any moment, but chose not to." Ashley had cried for 6 hours. I felt a complex mixture of satisfaction and sympathy at that image. "Mike, I never wanted to destroy anyone's career. I wanted to be treated with basic respect by my own family." "I know. And that's what makes this so much worse. You had the power to hurt us all along, but you didn't use it until we pushed you past your breaking point. So what are you asking for?" "I'm asking for the chance to rebuild our relationship the right way, with honesty about who you are and what you've accomplished, with appreciation for everything you've done for our family, and with respect for your opinions and your place in Tyler's life." It was everything I'd wanted to hear for 3 years, but I needed to be sure he understood the deeper implications of what he was saying. "Mike, that means Ashley can't control every aspect of my relationship with Tyler. It means you can't dismiss my suggestions just because they come from an older generation. It means treating me like a valued family member instead of an obligation you're forced to manage." "I understand. And Mom, I want Tyler to know who his grandmother really is. I want him to be proud of what you've accomplished, not kept ignorant about it because we were too embarrassed to admit we'd been wrong about your importance." "What about Ashley? How is she handling all of this?" Mike's expression grew somber. "She's devastated. Not just about the job situation, but about understanding how badly she's treated you. She wants to apologize, but she's afraid you'll never forgive her." "Why is she afraid of that?" "Because she knows that what she did to you at Tyler's birthday party was unforgivable. Throwing your gifts in the trash, humiliating you in front of the whole family. Mom, she understands now that she wasn't just being mean to some interfering grandmother. She was being cruel to a successful businesswoman who deserved respect." That afternoon, Ashley called and asked if she could come over to talk. When she arrived, it was clear she'd been crying almost continuously since Tuesday evening. "Ruth," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I don't know how to apologize for what I've done to you." "Start by telling me why you did it," I said. Ashley sat on my couch, twisting her hands in her lap, clearly struggling to find the right words. "I think I was threatened by you," she admitted. "Not consciously, but Mike talked about you with such respect and admiration, and Tyler obviously adored you, and I felt like I could never measure up to this amazing mother and grandmother who'd accomplished so much. So you decided to diminish my accomplishments instead of trying to build a relationship with me? I convinced myself that your accomplishments were exaggerated or outdated. I told myself that Mike was just being sentimental about his mother's little business, and that Tyler was too young to understand that your ideas about parenting and family were old-fashioned. And how do you feel about those assumptions now?" Ashley started crying again. "I feel like the stupidest person alive. Ruth, you built a company that employs hundreds of people and generates millions of dollars in revenue. You've been successful in ways I can't even imagine. And I treated you like you were some doddering old woman who didn't understand the modern world. Ashley, why was it so important to you to control my relationship with Tyler? Because I wanted to be the most important woman in his life. I know that sounds selfish and petty, but I was jealous of how much he loved you. Instead of trying to build my own special relationship with him, I tried to tear down yours. It was a brutally honest assessment, and I appreciated her willingness to examine her own motivations. "What do you want from me now?" I asked. "I want the chance to show you that I can be the daughter-in-law you deserve. I want to learn from your experience instead of dismissing it. I want Tyler to know his grandmother as the amazing woman she really is. And I want to earn your forgiveness, even though I don't deserve it." "Ashley, what would earning my forgiveness look like?" "It would look like me apologizing to Tyler for keeping him away from you. It would look like me asking for your advice about parenting and actually listening to your answers. It would look like me celebrating your accomplishments instead of pretending they don't exist." Dave's apology came Friday morning, exactly 72 hours after my ultimatum. "Mom," he said when he called, "I've been talking to Linda about everything that's happened, and we both want you to know that we're ashamed of how we've treated you." "How have you treated me, Dave?" "Like you were irrelevant. Like your business experience didn't matter anymore because you'd retired. Like your opinions about family and work were outdated because you're older than us." "And what changed your mind?" "Finding out that the supposedly irrelevant woman we'd been dismissing actually controls my livelihood and probably has more business expertise than everyone else in our family combined." Dave's apology was more straightforward than Mike's emotional revelation or Ashley's tearful confession, but it was equally sincere. "Mom, I want my kids to know their grandmother as someone to respect and learn from, not someone to humor and patronize." By Friday afternoon, all three of them had asked for my help resolving their work situations. But more importantly, they'd asked for guidance on rebuilding our family relationships in a way that honored both my experience and their autonomy as adults. The professional crisis resolution was surprisingly simple once everyone's priorities were realigned. I had lunch with Jennifer Walsh and explained that I wanted Palmer and Associates to strengthen our relationships with Pinnacle Solutions, MedCore Solutions, and Central Tennessee Financial Services by offering enhanced service packages that would make us more valuable partners rather than recommending alternatives. "So instead of streamlining our services, we're expanding them?" Jennifer asked. "Exactly. These clients have been loyal partners for years. Instead of pushing them away, let's find ways to make their relationships with us even more beneficial." Within 2 weeks, Mike received a promotion to Senior Regional Manager based on Pinnacle's newly enhanced partnership with Palmer and Associates. Ashley was offered a supervisory role at Dynamic Healthcare Marketing when MedCore decided to expand their vendor relationships instead of bringing services in-house. Dave's position at Central Tennessee Financial Services was upgraded to Director of Public Relations when they signed an expanded contract with our firm. All three of them received significant salary increases and improved job security, which I made sure they understood was the direct result of Palmer and Associates' strategic decision to invest more heavily in these client relationships. "Your career advancement," I told Mike during one of our coffee meetings, "is what happens when you're employed by companies that maintain excellent relationships with their strategic partners." But the professional improvements were just the surface level of the transformation in our family dynamic. The real change came in how my family members began to see me and interact with me. Mike started asking for my business advice on genuinely complex professional challenges, treating me like the experienced executive I was, rather than a retiree who might have outdated opinions. Ashley began including me in Tyler's day-to-day activities in meaningful ways, asking for my input on parenting decisions and actually implementing my suggestions when they made sense. Dave invited me to speak at his company's professional development seminars, introducing me as my mother, Ruth Palmer, founder and board member of Palmer & Associates, with obvious pride in my accomplishments. But perhaps the most meaningful change was in my relationship with Tyler. Ashley had taken my advice and explained to Tyler that his grandmother wasn't just someone who brought him presents and told him stories, but someone who had built a successful business and employed lots of people. "Grandma Ruth," Tyler had said during one of our recent visits, "Ashley says you're like a boss of a whole company. Does that mean you're really important?" "What do you think, sweetheart?" "I think you're the most important grandma in the world," he'd said, wrapping his arms around my neck. "And I want to build a company someday too, just like you did." 6 months after that devastating birthday party, Tyler and I were planning his 8th birthday celebration together. Ashley had asked for my input on every aspect of the party planning, and we'd settled on a theme that combined his love of superheroes with his new interest in business and entrepreneurship. "Ruth," Ashley said as she brought lunch into the playroom where Tyler and I were building, "I have something for you." She handed me a beautifully wrapped package, and when I opened it, I found a framed photo of Tyler and me at his recent school science fair, where I'd been his business partner for a project about marketing strategies for lemonade stands. "I wanted you to have this," Ashley said, "because I realized I never properly thanked you for being patient with me while I figured out how to be a good daughter-in-law. Ashley, you're a wonderful mother and a good person. You just needed to understand that respecting me doesn't diminish your importance in Tyler's life. It enhances it." "I know that now. And Ruth, Tyler's birthday present this year is going to be that red bicycle you bought him last year. I saved it from the trash that day, and I've been keeping it in our garage, hoping someday I'd be wise enough to give it to him properly." I looked at this young woman who had caused me so much pain and who was now working so hard to rebuild our relationship, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: hope for our family's future. "Ashley, would you like me to teach Tyler to ride that bicycle?" "I would love that," she said, tears in her eyes. "Mike and I talked about it, and we think learning to ride a bike should be something special between Tyler and his grandmother. It's a tradition we want you to start." That evening, I sat in my study looking at the framed photo Ashley had given me and thinking about the lessons this experience had taught all of us. I'd learned that being modest about your accomplishments can sometimes be mistaken for insignificance, and that respect has to be maintained, not just earned once and forgotten. My family had learned that assumptions about someone's importance or capability can blind you to the power they actually hold, and that treating people badly has consequences you might never see coming. But perhaps most importantly, we'd all learned that love without respect is just sentiment, and that real family relationships require ongoing effort to see and value each other as complete, complex people rather than convenient roles. The woman who had been dismissed as a meddling old grandmother was still there, but she was now backed by the full recognition of her intelligence, her achievements, and her ongoing influence in the world. And the family who had learned to respect Ruth Palmer, the businesswoman, had also learned to love Ruth Palmer, the grandmother, in ways that were deeper and more genuine than anything we'd had before. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to a family is a crisis that forces everyone to see each other clearly, honestly, and completely. Sometimes you have to lose respect before you can rebuild it on a stronger foundation. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is remind people that underestimating you is the first step toward discovering exactly how much their comfortable lives depend on your continued goodwill. My family will never again make the mistake of telling me to stay out of their business, because now they understand that their business has always been my business. They just didn't know it. And that knowledge has made all of us better people, better family members, and better partners in building a legacy that Tyler will someday be proud to inherit. The phone call I made from Tyler's birthday party had indeed changed their lives forever. But it had changed mine too, in ways that were more healing and empowering than I ever could have imagined. Sometimes the best revenge is showing people that you're not who they thought you were. Sometimes it's showing them exactly who you've always been.